Welcome back, coders. So in the past couple of videos we got this whole countdown timer working and most of the app is pretty much done. But what we're going to do today is we're going to finally implement this finish book button. Right now it doesn't do anything, but at the end of the episode we're going to be able to click this finish book and submit our review for the book. But before we start that, I wanted to actually go over what we're going to do in this video first, because it's getting a little tricky. There's a lot of intertwined pieces. So I separated by which files we're going to be touching. So we have our current group state that we're going to be touching. We're going to be adding a new state called done with current book, and then an event called finish book. Then in our database file, we're going to add two functions, one called finish book, the other is user done with current book. Then in our home screen, the finish book button that we had, we're going to have it lead to a review screen, which is this one. And then we're also going to disable that button if this done with current book state is true. And then finally, within the review screen, we're going to be able to give a rating, a review, then send the event for finished book, and then go back to our home screen. So not too complicated, and let's get started. So first things first, let's get the database interfaces figured out. So how we're going to do, we have our group. This is the group. Inside we have our books. We have a bunch of books we put in. Then inside each book, so let's pretend this is the current book that we're reading. We're going to add a collection called reviews. Document ID is going to be the UID of the user. Field is going to have a rating of integer 1 through 10. Let's just do that. And then also a review of string. They'll have the individual's review for the book. So that's what it's going to look like. And we're going to add one for each UID. So let's get those interfaces defined. If we go to our app, we said we're going to need two functions. First one's going to return a future string, and it's going to be called finished book. So inside we're going to need a lot of parameters, I think. So we're going to go inside the books. We're going to need the book ID. Inside the reviews, we're going to need the review ID. If we go back, we'll also need the group ID as well. So we need group ID, book ID, and then user ID as well. And then once we finish the book, we also need integer of rating, and then a string of our review. So that should be that. So our return value is going to be like we always do return values. And there we go. Equals error, and make sure we make this asynchronous as well. And put another comma here just for readability. Okay, so then inside we're going to need a try catch. Inside the try, we're going to await Firestore collection, the groups collection, the document group ID, which we passed in, collection, the books collection, which book, we have the book ID passed in also, then another collection, reviews, and document, the UID, which we passed in. And then finally, set data. So we'll want to set the rating data to rating, and review data to review. There. That should be all we need for the finished book. Then we're also going to need to check if the current user is finished with the book. So we'll need the same thing because we need to get to the group, we need to get to the book, and then inside the reviews we need to check for the UID. So if, where is it? We need to check if this UID is already in this collection. So how to do that? We can have a future. This one can return a bool. Since we need a true or false, then we can call it is user done with book. And inside, like I said, we'll need a string for the group ID, string for the book ID, and a string for the UID of the user. Async bool is false, false, and then return the return value. So this time inside the try catch, we'll do a pretty similar call. So we can actually copy this. Then in here, paste it. Document snapshot is what we want to return. Doc snapshot UID.get. Then if our document snapshot dot exists, then we will return true. And here let's add a print D. So we look for the document with the specific person UID. If it's there, we say the user is done with book. If it's not, user is not done with book. So simple as that. Next, we can move on to the state. So inside the state, we said we're going to need to add two things: a state called done with current book and an event for finished book. So let's do just that. So bool done with current book. Let's initialize it to false. Then add a getter for this. Get done with current book. So there we have our state defined. We need to update this at the beginning. So update state from database. Let's add that here as well. Done with current book equals await our database is user done with book. So we need group ID, which we will already have. Book ID, which we can do from current group dot current book ID. And then the UID is something we do not have. So we'll need to pass this in as a parameter. So string user UID. Pass it here, and there we go. So this causes an error in our code over here. When we initialize the state, we don't pass in the UID, but it's actually not a problem. We have the current user here. We can pass it in. Current user, get current user, and then UID. So that fixes that. So we had one more thing we need to do here, and it was add another event. So this event is called finished book. We will need to pass in user UID, the rating, and the review. Then inside a try catch, we will await our database and call the finished book function. So here we need the group ID. Group ID we get from current group.id. Book ID we get from current group dot current book ID. UID we get from being passed in. Rating should be an integer. And then review, just like that. And then we also need to set this state variable. So I don't think we need to check if user is done with book. We could just done with the current book, set it to true. And then make sure to notify listeners. So there, we have all our backend stuff pretty much done. Our state is being updated. Our database is doing the updating. Now we just need to make the UI be capable of doing all these things. Okay, so now we're inside our home screen, which is this screen. We need to update this finished button. So check the finished button. On press we have nothing. But this is inside a consumer, which provides us a value, which is our current group. So we can do value dot get current group. Oh, get done with current book. If that's true, return null. Otherwise, call a function, go to review. Let's create this function. So just like we have go to add book, let's do void go to review. All the errors go away, and if we refresh, this should still be clickable. But now in this review screen, we could copy paste this code. And instead of our add book, we want to do our review. So we need to add that screen. New folder, call it review. New file, review.dart. So here, we're gonna have a stateful widget. Gonna call it our review. Make sure to import everything you need. Easy. So there's actually something a little tricky with this review screen. So if you remember, in our root, we wrap our home screen with our change notifier provider for the group. That means the home screen and all the widgets below it have access to our current group. But the review screen, since we push it, it's now no longer in the widget tree. So we won't have the current group provider accessible from here. So you could restructure the app in a way where this is provided our current group state. But I think for us, it's just easier right now to just pass it in. Because we're going to be calling it from the home screen. The home screen definitely has that, so we could just pass it in and everything should work. So now let's go back to home. Here where we do navigator.push, let's actually do let's get this. Get our current group, and then for our add book, which is incorrect, we change it to our review. Current group, pass current group. So now we should have all the access we want to everything we need inside our review page. We don't need access to our user because the user is globally accessible. So all right. This is the last part. We can pretty much copy what we have in the create group screen. So let's get this scaffold. And we could just add it in here. I got 2 returns. That's fine. So import our container. This text form field we can remove for now. Or we can keep it in and change what this is. This could be the review. Add a review. And here instead of add book, say add review. unpressed. Just remove that for now. Keep it like that. So let's see what the screen looks like. Add a review. Simple. So we're going to do a bit more. We have our back button. We have our spacer. Let's add a drop-down menu at the top. I'm just going to copy paste the code because it's nothing too complex, just a little time sensitive. And then let's add a field for integer drop down value equals, or just set it to null. Alright, so that's what it looks like. It's outside of our column. Okay, so I added it into the wrong place. Let me take that and add it in above this text widget. So rate book 1 to 10. What does this look like? We have a row. Inside the row, we have a text widget saying rate book 1 to 10. We can actually remove this and just do space evenly or space around. Whatever. Either one works. Inside we have a drop down button with integers. Its initial value is this. It's set to null so nothing shows up. Icon arrow downward, icon size 24, elevation, all that. Style, deep purple. We can just do this, secondary header color. Or instead, actually, let's do canvas color. Oh, that doesn't work. No. Let's do secondary header color there. And then for this underline, let's do canvas color. Pick a number 1 through 10. Have your number in here. Underline, and then when you change it, set the drop down value to the new value. What are the items in there? 10 integers, 1 through 10. And when you put it in here, you'll have the value in string form. That's it. Then we can add a review. So we want to update this text form field. We need to add a controller. Text editing controller. Review controller. And create an instance of that controller. So down here, text form field, controller, review controller. And also we're going to make it a bit bigger. So do max lines. Let's do 6. There. And we can actually remove this icon. I don't think it's necessary. So that looks good to me. Now there's only one last thing to do. When we press it, we need to call that state for finished book. So first we need the UID, because remember, to our current group we need to pass in user UID and then rating and review. We will have provider.of current user. Let's import that as well. And make sure we do listen false. So we don't want to listen to the return of that. And get current user and then UID. So we have the UID there. Then why we needed to pass in the current group into the screen so that we can actually access that state function. So widget.current group, finished book, UID, rating is our drop-down value, review is review controller.text, and that's done. One last thing, navigator.pop. So we go back to the home screen and it should be done. So let's give Brave New World was a 10 out of 10. Let's make sure that's the right book. So yeah, Brave New World, doing 7 days. Let's say we finished the book. Best book I've ever read. Everybody should read it. It's in the description if you want. And the review, this is the best book I've ever read. Add that review, pops back here. Finish book button is disabled, just like we want it to. And we should be able to see that book review in our database. So this is the one, Brave New World, Aldous Huxley. We see our UID is right here. Our rating is a 10. And our review, this is the best book I've ever read. Perfect. So that's it for today's video. This code will be on GitHub if you want to look at it and better understand it. If you have any questions or anything, leave it in the comments. Like, subscribe, and share if you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.